Today's destination is Seymour, Wisconsin. Seymour is a town in Eau Claire County, and in the 2000 census, the population was under 3,000. The 2.8 square miles of Seymour has more residents now, but not by much. The landscape of Seymour is rural and beautiful, and there are many nice homes on large plots of land. But there is also an underbelly to this small town. And in 1995, from one mobile home park came a wolf in sheep's clothing who preyed upon the weak and the vulnerable.
In 1995, 13-year-old Jessyca Mullenberg lived with her mother, Monica, and stepfather, Jake, in Junction City, Wisconsin. She was in 7th grade at P.J. Jacobs Middle School, and she was totally sporty, totally creative. She played volleyball, she played basketball, she loved art, and she loved writing, and writing was something she absolutely excelled at. And in fact, this was the perfect junior high for her because they actually had a teacher's aide who was dedicated to a writing club for the students at the school. Jessica's father, Dale, lived in a town called Seymour, which was about 100 miles away from where her mom lived in Junction City. And so Jessica stayed with her mom most of the time, but she would go spend every other weekend with her father and his new wife, Bobby Joe. And Jessica had 2 younger siblings, full siblings, at her house with her mom, who stayed with her mom as well. And then her dad, when he married Bobby Joe, they had 2 children together as well. So she had 2 younger half siblings who she saw every other weekend. Now, on September 17th of 1995, Jessica was supposed to be returning to her mother's house after a weekend away spent at her dad's place. But that morning, so this is a Sunday morning, Jessica's dad called Monica and said, "I think Jessica ran away." Now, Monica was having none of that. Immediately, she's like, this makes absolutely no sense. There is no way she ran away. And the 2 argued about, like, when did you find out she was gone? How did you know? And so again, this is Sunday morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning. And Dale actually admitted to his ex-wife that he hadn't seen Jessica since she'd gone to bed on Friday night. And it was now, as we said, Sunday morning. Mom Monica told Dad Dale to call 911 immediately, which is exactly what he did. And the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Office responded. Dale told deputies that what had happened was his daughter was supposed to be up early on that Saturday morning because this teacher's assistant, who we talked about, who worked with Jessica and others on writing, actually had submitted some of her writing to Random House Publishing, and they got a hit. And Stephen Oliver, who was the teacher's aide, he said, "Hey, you know what, Jessica? I'm going to work with you on it Saturday morning, and then we're going to drive together to go meet with the Random House folks in Madison, Wisconsin," which was about a 3-hour drive from where Jessica's father lived. So Jessica was supposed to be picked up at 6:30 by Stephen. And of course, when Dale got up that morning, she was gone, and he assumed that's where they were. And she still wasn't home when he went to bed that night, but he knew obviously it was a 3-hour round trip and all of that. He wasn't really worried.
Stephen Oliver, I think, estimated that they were going to get home between 9:30 and 10 because he said, after all of this work and meeting with this publisher, we're going to go to dinner.
We're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
Understandably, then, when Jessica's father woke up Sunday morning and Jessica wasn't in the house, he got worried very quickly. So he told deputies that Stephen had actually been selling off personal property, and he knew this because Stephen had told him that he was intending to move to Detroit, Michigan for a new job. But Dale also told deputies that he was certain that Stephen Oliver would never harm his daughter.
So deputies spoke with Stephen Oliver's ex-wife, and she said, "I'm living here now. He's moved out. He asked me to come and take care of our 14-year-old because our 14-year-old son isn't going to go move with him." So she explained how she had just moved back into the house. And investigators took this very seriously immediately, and they published a description of Jessica. Jessica was a peanut. She was 5'1", 104 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, and no surprise, because she was an athlete, she was wearing a Charlotte Hornets jacket and some black Converse when she was last seen by her father. Newspapers also published photographs of Stephen Oliver and photographs of Jessyca. And they also gave a description of his vehicle, which was a 1985 blue two-door, I think it's pronounced Calais, like an Oldsmobile Calais.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
It looks like it should be, because is it otherwise Calais? That doesn't sound right. It's not fancy.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that I'm not insulting all Oldsmobile members. This is a car that could definitely have been in my family growing up.
Was it a boat?
It was.
Looks like the caddies
It was
that they
blue
had?
with like pink and blue pinstriping.
Okay. It makes sense. It was a 1985, 86, did you say? Because those were 80s colors.
Totally.
All he needed was some green instead of the blue with the pink. And
Right.
he would have been spot on Joe
Exactly.
Prep.
A nice peach hue somewhere.
Exactly.
So naturally, the sheriff's department was in touch with the district attorney's office, and the district attorney said that he thought this was just a misunderstanding. You know, Jessica's going to come home and it's all going to be explained. However, I'm going to file charges so that we can issue subpoenas and search warrants and those kind of things. So he filed charges, and it was a felony criminal complaint for interference with child custody. Now, this was on a Monday. So dad comes forward on a Sunday saying, haven't seen my daughter since Friday.
But I know the guy she's with, wouldn't harm her.
Exactly. And the very next day, charges are filed against him. And because there was fear that he had taken her across a state line, perhaps, the FBI also got involved, which of course is common in these very sensitive kidnapping cases. Right. 4 days after Jessyca was last seen, her father, Dale, received a letter in the mail. And this letter was postmarked September 16th, which is the Saturday that she was with Stephen Oliver, you know, supposedly going to meet publishers. The letter was in her handwriting, and only a portion of it was released to the press. They didn't show the letter. They just simply discussed a portion of the contents. And what Jessyca said in the letter in her own handwriting was that Stephen Oliver dropped her back off at her dad's house, and then she decided she didn't want to go home. So she went to a friend's house. The letter implied that she had an unhappy family life and she just didn't want to be there.
But it also didn't name the friend as far as we know, correct?
Exactly. And so now, again, this is 4 days after she was last seen. So mom has already called all of her friends. Dad has done what he could, you know, and so mom knew this was BS. None of her friends knew where she was or had heard from her. So mom takes to the press. She spoke with a journalist from the Stevens Point Journal, and she insisted that Jessyca was coerced into writing the letter. She said she was not unhappy at home. There was absolutely no reason for her to run away. And she knew that none of her friends had seen her.
Well, and her mom also said, I know my daughter. I know how she speaks and I know how she writes. This is not her. This is what she was told to write.
Mom also knew something else. She knew that Stephen Oliver had intentionally placed himself near Jessyca for years.
According to an AP article in the Stevens Point Journal, 6 years before Jessyca disappeared, she was living with her mom and dad, who were still together at the time, and her two younger brothers, and they lived in the town of Seymour. And that's how they also met Stephen Oliver. Stephen and his son also lived in the same area, in the same neighborhood, and Jessyca would often play with the son and a bunch of other kids. But when the kids were all out and about, they would invariably find themselves back at the Oliver house, kind of like, you know, that house that all the kids go to, usually the ones with the pool and the air conditioning.
Exactly.
So and, you know, it was obvious to both Dale and Monica that Stephen was very fond of Jessyca and interested in what she was doing. He liked her writing. She would share it with him. He'd encourage it. But then Jessica's mom and dad got divorced. The mom got custody of all three kids. Jessyca, of course, as we said, saw her father every other weekend. And they actually moved to Stevens Point. And this is about 100 miles away from where they lived in Seymour. Kath, then Stephen Oliver and his child moved into Stevens Point. Not only did he move to Stevens Point, he moved in right next door to Monica and Jessica's house. And now Monica was remarried, and so she and her husband lived there with Jessyca and her 2 younger brothers. So they're now neighbors again. His son gets enrolled in the same school that Jessyca is enrolled in, and the children become classmates. And then it was shortly after this that Stephen got a job at their same school as the teacher's aide. So that fall, this is 1993, so this is 2 years before Jessyca disappeared, Jessica's mom actually went up to Stephen Oliver and said, "Stay away from my daughter. I'm sure you're a lovely man." I don't even know if she said that, but I mean, I actually appreciate the balls on her to do this, where she's like, "I'm not comfortable with you being around my daughter all the time. Stay away from her. Don't talk to her. She isn't allowed at your house anymore." Okay. And like a little while later, a for sale sign went up in front of the Oliver house. So, Jessica's mom was like, "Phew,
yeah,
got rid of that." And he did. But then Monica, Jessica's mom, found out that Stephen Oliver and his son had moved into the mobile home park across the street from Dale, Jessica's father. Mm-hmm. So he now had access to her every other weekend. And so at this point, Kath, we said Stephen was a teacher's aide. This is the point where he was then also made to be the teacher's aide responsible for the writing club, of which we said Jessyca was a part and very successful. Knowing all this information that Monica does, Jessica's mom, she and her husband kicked into action to do everything she could to make sure the news of Jessyca being gone was far and wide. So they established a Find Jessyca Fund at the Trinity Lutheran Church. They set up a Help Find Jessyca volunteer line where they had, or volunteer center, where people could call in and leave tips or if they've seen her and everything.
And Kath, I was amused because at the volunteer center, they specifically said there's 2 phone lines and a fax machine.
True.
That fax machine was probably the size of this table.
And weighed like the size of the car.
Exactly. You remember how they used to make that sound like, zzz, 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 like
that was the dot matrix printer.
Exactly.
They also distributed missing persons flyers. They worked with local businesses, asked them to put it up. They also worked with anybody who had marquees, like obviously movie theater, anything like that. They asked them to put up signs as well.
And that's one of the things that they were doing. That's what they wanted to raise money for, is because they wanted billboards all over the place to have her picture. And so that was one of the things they needed money for.
Right.
And so it was one of her friends, I think, was quoted in the paper saying, finding somebody takes money. You don't realize it, but finding somebody takes money.
It takes a lot of money.
And so it's like, okay, when you really think about it, hiring a PI, doing the billboards, doing all this kind of stuff.
And you're relying on the kindness of strangers.
Totally.
Like printing companies and all of that. So
yeah, that's true. Printing flyers costs money.
Exactly. Yep. Now, 7 days after Jessyca went missing, her case appeared on a segment of America's Most Wanted. And it turned out that somebody who knew Monica also knew somebody who worked at America's Most Wanted.
Oh, interesting.
And so they were able to fast track this because it never goes up that quickly.
I was actually surprised because having a disappearance and then this thing goes up within a week. Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. They were able, whoever this person was, it was a friend of theirs, was able to pull some strings. Boom. Got up there.
Nice.
I know. Isn't that amazing? So this, of course, allowed photos of Jessyca and Stephen Oliver to be widely publicized across the U.S. And then, of course, they always have that tip number that viewers are encouraged to call. Now, while it brought in a lot of phone calls and a lot of time was spent by local and federal police looking into all the tips that they received, at this point, unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. And Kathy, at Monica's home, they put up purple flowers, and purple was Jessica's favorite color. And it said, there was a big sign on it that said, "Jessyca, please come home. Everyone misses you. Everyone loves you. We miss you, sweetheart." So, always making sure anybody who drove by saw the sign and remembered that Jessyca was there.
It was held up by big purple balloons as well.
Yeah. Then they also did everything they could to keep the media talking about the case. So 2 weeks after she went missing, hundreds of thousands of posters were printed so that they could be distributed. Her father, Dale, went on TV and made an appeal to Stephen Oliver personally to return his daughter. He told Stephen that everybody was worried about her and said, please just leave her in a safe place. That's all we want. We just want her back. We don't need to bring you in.
Right.
And then the following month in 1995, and I know this is your favorite quote about what their next step was.
Exactly. What did they say? Do you have it in front of you? You read it. Go ahead.
Plans were made to put details of the case on the computer internet.
Right.
1995, folks. So leads came in, nothing substantive. And by November, the tips were drying up. But it was actually that same month, though, Kath, that they were able to get Wisconsin truckers to agree to put her missing poster on the back of every single one of their big rigs.
Which I think is genius.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
It's a modern version of the milk carton.
Totally. That's so true. And also, Cal, something to think about, like back then, because the internet, like people just started getting personal computers. You know, businesses just started getting personal computers in
and
1995.
Email addresses and
exactly. It was all new. And so people looked to the same sources to find information. Mm-hmm. They were all the local papers. And so the nice thing is that everybody's reading the local paper. Everyone's watching the 5 o'clock news. Everyone is seeing Jessica's face. But as time went on, you know, her mother's like, it's fading. I'm going to do anything. I'm going to do anything. Yeah.
And not only that, but had she left the circle of their Wisconsin communities?
Right.
You know, I mean, is she in another state? It might not be on their local news.
Yeah. So the same month that these truckers agreed to put up their poster on the side of their trucks, the first break in the case came in. Stephen Oliver's Oldsmobile, Calais,
we fancy,
was found was found at the Kansas City, Missouri airport, and based upon, I believe it was one of those tickets that you take, you know, when you go into a parking structure.
So they know how much to charge you.
Yeah, exactly. They knew it had been there for 2 months. Like it was there 2 days after she went missing. And they were so hopeful that it would give an indication of where he took her. But it also terrified everybody. Like at an airport, they could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And they found nothing in the car. And of course, they weren't registered on any flight. This is at a time, as you know, you didn't have to give identification to buy a ticket.
You could say, my name is
Queen Elizabeth.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, this lead went nowhere, and her family had to keep praying, and authorities had to keep looking. Unsolved Mysteries even aired a segment in November, again, the same month this is all happening, and it brought in leads, but not many. And they went nowhere.
I believe it was called Dozens.
Dozens of leads.
Which is just, that just breaks my heart.
Exactly.
And maybe that's why it got canceled.
Seriously. But by December, so this is 3 months after Jessica was last seen, police had been able to finally forensically examine Stephen's computer. Now, Stephen was a computer nerd, so he was a little bit ahead of the curve.
He was a techie. It wasn't just computers.
He was ahead of the curve. And so it took them a long time to find an expert who was able to like examine everything anyway.
Because the police departments didn't have them at that point.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So on his computer, they found evidence that he was trying to move to Waterloo, which is in Ontario, Canada. And so they're like, aha, he told everybody he was moving to Detroit. That's what he wanted everyone to believe. But we've searched his computer and we know that he wants to go to Waterloo. So the FBI contacts Waterloo, which is about 3 hours north of Detroit, and they come up empty. They get 4 calls. That's it. There's no sighting. There's no evidence. So now everyone's very, very dejected. They're like, she's probably overseas. Where is she? She could be anywhere.
Anywhere.
Exactly. And also from his computer, authorities found out that Stephen Oliver had sold computer equipment to 20 people, none of whom actually received the equipment. But because of this phony sale, he had an extra $10,000 in his pocket.
So computer scams pretty much started at the beginning of the computer age.
Thievery is thievery. It's always,
Yeah.
Anyway, so they knew...
Cheater's going to cheat.
They knew he had some extra money to tide him over. And Kathy did an inflation calculator. And
As I do.
We both think the number's wrong.
Exactly. I know it was the U.S. labor statistics, but I'm totally disagreeing with them because it says $10,000. This is purchasing power. It says $10,000 in 1995 dollars, $10,000. Today has the purchasing power of $21,500. Now, add that onto the fact that I was just telling Kathy, I read an article that Egg McMuffins are now $7.75 in California.
When you say you were reading an article, do you mean a menu at the drive-thru?
It totally was not. I have not gone there since I realized their large Diet Cokes are now $3.75.
It's crazy.
I will not buy their food. And it could just be in California because of the $20 minimum wage law that California legislators thought was so smart.
So good. Yes, so good.
But yeah, like you can't say that, how many Egg McMuffins can you get now versus 1995? It is not twice as many.
I agree with you. It's not 2.5 times the Egg McMuffin. It's like 10 times the Egg McMuffin.
Exactly.
For sure. Anyway, that's our scientific analysis.
and I'm sure you like how we make these, what we're comparing it with.
And the funny thing is, like before we began recording, when Kathy and I were talking, she delivered this news and it was like a gut punch. She was like, guess how much an Egg McMuffin is now? And I'm like, oh, how much? But I was like, it's shocking.
Yeah.
How expensive it is.
And the biscuits, which are the ones I prefer. You like the Egg McMuffins.
I do.
But the biscuits are $8.75.
I will never eat another biscuit in my life.
I won't go through McDonald's drive-thru or even into the store ever again.
Did my nose just grow?
No. A little bit.
A little bit.
I'll share when she goes.
Oh.
But usually I'm the recipient of that as well. So I still encourage it.
All right. So back to Jessyca. We are now in December 1995. So on Christmas Eve of this year, a prayer vigil was held at the Unitarian Fellowship Church in Eau Claire. And Eau Claire is the county, obviously, in which her dad lives. Needless to say, her family was having the worst Christmas of their lives. And with tips dwindling, with resources drying up, they were terrified of what was going to happen with the investigation.
So as Kath said, December 24th was when they had this vigil for Jessyca. 4 days later, Kathy, a woman in Texas was watching a rerun of America's Most Wanted. And when 2 photos flashed on the screen, her blood ran cold. She recognized them as a father and daughter named Dave and Cindy Johnson, who had been living at the Days Inn that she managed for about 3 months. So, of course, Kathy, she calls America's Most Wanted and says, hey, I know these people. It was like 11 o'clock at night. I know these people. I know they're the ones. Yes, 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 yes. So America's Most Wanted called the FBI and they said to the FBI agents, this sounds like the real deal. Like you guys are going to want to go check this out. So without wasting any time, they have an FBI team go straight to the Days Inn. And it was right around midnight when it was a bam, 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 FBI let us in, came and knocking at the Days Inn door. The man, the father, Dave Johnson, opened the door. They'd obviously woken Dave and his daughter Cindy up because it was the middle of the night. And he was like, what are you talking about? This is my daughter, Cindy. And so the FBI agent said to her, what's your name? And she said, Cindy Johnson. And that's my dad, David. And they're like, no. Seriously, what's your name? That's not your name. Your name is Jessyca. Tell me you're Jessyca. I'm not Jessyca. My name is Cindy. So the police or the FBI round them up, take them down to FBI headquarters or one of their offices, or maybe even a police station. I'm really not sure which.
Takes them away from the Days Inn.
Somewhere. And they start questioning them and they separate them at this point. And they were saying to this girl, like, your name is Jessyca. Your mom and dad have been looking for you and your family and your friends. Like, they've been looking for you. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So one of the FBI agents actually called Jessica's mother, Monica, and gave the phone to Jessyca. And as soon as Jessyca heard her mom's voice, she just broke down crying. She knew she was safe. She knew that because I guess one of the things she had said is that she was afraid that these were fake FBI agents.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure this guy said.
Right, exactly.
The police are on my side. They don't know you. They don't like you, whatever,
right.
all that
They're
stuff.
going to arrest you. They're going to put you in jail, all that kind of stuff. And, one of the interesting things, Kathy, is this woman who worked at the Days Inn had said she actually thought they were kind of sketchy from the beginning because, like, within hours of arriving at the hotel, they cut this young girl's hair, so Jessica's hair, super short. Whereas before it had been this...
It was a mid-back. She had very long hair, yeah.
And so now all of a sudden it's super short haircut, and it was like, oh, was she trying to disguise her? But 3 months go on before she calls anybody, and I get it. Like, it's... People can get haircuts, but...
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to say? These sketchy people gave this girl a haircut?
Exactly. Well, sketchy dad. Most dads don't give haircuts. But the other thing, too, is that they'd been there a long time. And Dave apparently who we now know as Stephen Oliver, was very handy. And so this Days Inn just happened to be undergoing renovations. And they hired him and said, hey, we'll let you stay here if you do some of the work. You work as a handyman, you do some of the painting. And so they actually put them in a room that was in a part of the hotel that was closed to other guests for renovations. So there wasn't even anybody who would ever see them coming and going.
Right.
So anyway.
They had their own little overlook hotel.
Exactly.
What was that from?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
Red Rum.
Oh, The Shining.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
It's weird though. She does red rum all the time and just for no reason. So. Obviously, the next step is they get Jessica on an airplane. 104 days after she was taken from Wisconsin, she arrived and was greeted by her mom and dad and her friends and her family, a very, very warm welcome. Obviously, like, people were just so excited. Also, I mean, they'd had this horrible Christmas, but their new year was starting exactly how they wanted it to.
Right.
Fresh start for everyone. Mm-hmm. Jessica was quoted in the paper saying as she was hugged and was led away, she kind of turned back to everyone and just said, thank you for helping me. Because she knew it took a lot of them to make sure that this happened.
Right.
Now, Stephen Oliver was extradited at a separate time to answer to these charges. And we were talking about the Jody Plauché case, which we did. It happened in Louisiana. And we really think that Dale, Jessica's dad, maybe should have emulated what Jody's dad did.
Right.
But you'll have to listen to the episode to find out what happened.
Right.
So anyway, Stephen Oliver was extradited to Wisconsin to answer for the charges. He was indicted on federal felony kidnapping charges and interstate transportation for illegal sexual purposes.
So the details of Jessica's experience were pretty much kept under wraps. She rejoined her life and she began her journey of healing, which was a very long road, as you can imagine. But the trial began fairly shortly after she returned. The trial began in June of 1996, just 6.5 months after she came home. So according to Michael Bulow of the Wisconsin State Journal, the jury heard how Stephen Oliver embarked on a calculated plan to create this, to live this fantasy that he had created with him and Jessica in his head. He wanted to live with her as husband and wife, despite the fact that she was a 13-year-old seventh grader. And Jessica admitted that Stephen Oliver had started molesting her when she was in the 3rd grade. So, as we said, when the parents lived together in Seymour, mom then left and Stephen Oliver followed them to Junction City. Even when the parents were together, the mom had a bad feeling on the guy. She felt he was just too interested in her daughter. And of course, that fear and recognition skyrocketed when he followed them to Junction City.
And she recognized it. Like, honestly, I'm super impressed with the mom.
Right, exactly. She eventually told Stephen Oliver, stay away from my kid. And that's when he sold his house and bounced to the dad's house or to the dad's neighborhood. But in all of this, Jessyca was already being molested. It's just that nobody knew because Stephen Oliver said, I will kill all of your family members. I will kill your little brothers. I will kill your parents. He terrified her.
Well, that's what Elizabeth Smart's abductor told her.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is what they do to get children to cooperate.
Yes.
Well, one of the things.
So, exactly. So anyway, so nobody knew that she had been molested before she came home from having been kidnapped. But now it's all of this information is coming out. And Jessyca testified that on the day she was kidnapped, she thought she was supposed to go with Stephen Oliver to have this meeting with the publisher who had expressed interest in her writing, as you said. But she was hinky. She didn't want to go. Like she said to her dad, does mom know you're doing this? And he said, yes.
But it turns out
mom did not know.
Dad's a lying liar who lies.
Exactly. Mom did not know that dad was allowing her to go with this man that mom didn't like.
And had told dad about it.
Exactly. And dad thought, oh, no, he seems like a nice guy.
You know how women are.
He seems like a nice guy.
Seriously, you know that went through his mind.
So Jessyca goes with him, even though she doesn't want to, and she sort of hopes for the best.
Well, if her mom said it was okay,
well,
you know?
Yeah, but I'm sure in her heart of hearts, she did not think her mother knew. You know what I mean?
You think so?
Oh, yeah. No, she didn't want to go. She gets in the car and she is hoping for the best. So she falls asleep because, of course, she had to get in his car at 6:30 in the morning, and she's a teenager and they like to sleep till 2 p.m.
Exactly.
Or at least I did.
Not just teenagers.
Exactly. So she wakes up as they're driving and her hands and legs are tied up. And she knows instantly, oh my God, my worst nightmare has come true, you know? And during the initial phone call, so remember dad calls mom and says, I think Jessyca ran away. Mom, Monica, was freaking out on him. She didn't run away. There's no reason to run away. Right. Who was she with last? And dad didn't want to say. And she's like, tell me who she was with last. Who was she? And then he said, Stephen Oliver. And she screamed. It was a news show. And the mom was interviewed. And she said, I didn't like this guy. When my husband and I were divorced, it was acrimonious. And she actually consulted with an attorney to see if it were possible to order her husband not to allow Jessyca to go around Stephen Oliver. And apparently this attorney said, you're not going to be successful on that.
Wow.
And I'm assuming it's because there was no restraining order in place, no evidence of molestation, just a mother's intuition.
A mother's correct intuition.
Oh, completely. Eventually, Stephen Oliver takes Jessyca to the airport. He then puts a small knife to her back and leads her through the airport and says, I'll kill you, and then I'll go back and kill your family if we don't just get through this.
And this is trial testimony, correct?
Oh, yeah, trial testimony, exactly. And so they stayed in various motels up to the point where they flew to Texas. And I want to say they had at least a few motels in Texas, but they land at the Days Inn. He says, I'm Dave Johnson. This is my daughter, Cindy. And if she's sad, it's because her twin brother and her mother were just killed in a car accident. And so, he sets up this sympathy for him and, all this kind of stuff.
And if she appears withdrawn, there's a reason for it.
Exactly. So at trial, Jessyca said how Stephen Oliver would make her make his lunch, do, I'm going to say housework around the motel, do chores for him, just do all this kind of stuff, like treated her like a little wifey wife. And at one point, they found a letter from Stephen to his son who says, Jessyca and I are living as husband and wife. I mean, unbelievable. Jessyca testified that she was raped or assaulted every day. And it's really not an assault. It's more like a battery.
Yeah.
She was counting the rapes, and I believe she said she was raped 26 times.
Right.
And she was punched in the face
Frequently.
A lot. Every day there was some form of physical abuse. Now, there were times, many, many times, when he would leave the hotel room and he would go do these painting jobs and handyman jobs. However, as Kath said, they're in this isolated part of the motel. And so what he did was he put the lock on the outside of the door. And he did something where he rewired the lines in the phone.
Now, this is a rotary telephone.
So, or could have been a push button.
No, it was a rotary phone.
Oh, it was a rotary phone?
They showed the phone.
Okay. So, if you guys don't know what a rotary dial is, ask your parents.
Or grandparents.
I haven't said that in a long time. But he made it so if Jessyca tried dialing, let's say a 3, it was really a 4, and a 1 was a 2. He basically jumbled the wires, unbeknownst to her, because the first thing she did when she was alone in that motel room was try to call home. But it was like beep, beep, beep.
And it made her doubt her own sanity and knowledge of, like, I know my home phone number.
Correct.
I know how to call home, but even though she was super careful trying to dial the numbers,
right,
they never went through.
Right. Exactly. So she told her story for over 3 hours. And at some point, the defense attorney was cross-examining her on this letter that she had written to one of her friends. And it was it said something like, I want all this to go away. I'm sick of this. Okay. And one of the defense theories was that she was a liar and she liked the limelight. And so when he was cross-examining her, when the defense attorney was cross-examining her, what did you mean by you're tired of this and you want this to go away? And she started crying and she said, the kids in school, I'm tired of them being mean to me, and just burst into tears. And in my head, I'm thinking, when I read that, I'm like, that backfired on him. Mm-hmm. You know, but anyway, so she had a really rough time testifying. I give her total credit.
She was I don't even know if
she was a seventh grader.
14 at the time even?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think she was still 13, but I'm not 100% positive on that. Anyway, so she did a great job testifying, but there was a lot of brutal cross-examination. But also called to the stand were the FBI agents who were in the motel room. I'm calling it a motel. It's probably a hotel. They were the ones who were in on the initial arrest. And when Stephen Oliver knew the jig was up, he admitted to them that he had sexual contact with Jessyca, but he said, oh, it wasn't intercourse. She's a very sexual child. And we had some touching. But I would never hurt her. I love her.
I would never do anything she didn't want me to do.
Right. She just rubbed my genitals.
Yeah.
I treated her like my daughter. It's like, wait, what? What?
Thank goodness he didn't have a daughter.
I know. Thank God. Ugh. Anyway, so they were able to admit at trial the statements he made to them on the night of his arrest. They also had witnesses from the hotel come and talk about how he would leave Jessyca for long periods of time. And there were times when she was out of the room. There were times when she was playing with other kids. And she never said, hey, my name's Jessyca, I've been kidnapped, that kind of thing. And so they were trying to make her look as though, oh, this was really, she really did run away. You know, I
think the term they used was, it was consensual.
It was consent. That's what they kept focusing on. She consented to leaving Wisconsin.
She was 13.
She was 13. It doesn't
I don't
count.
care what state you live in. That's not an age of consent for anything.
Legally impossible. They had experts come to the stand who talked about the fact that clothing and bed sheets, used underwear, used clothing, all that stuff was confiscated at the time of the arrest. On a white sock and Jessica's underwear, they found bodily fluids from Jessyca and semen. They had an expert come to the stand and say, that belongs to Stephen Oliver. So one thing the prosecutors also did was call in Stephen's ex-wife. Okay. And the purpose of calling her in was to show that this wasn't some spur of the moment thing where this traumatized 13-year-old runs to your house and wants you to take her away from her terrible, terrible abusive parents. The ex-wife came to the stand to show it was a plan. And so the ex-wife testified that when they got divorced, Stephen Oliver got custody of their son, who I think at the time was 13. And then I believe at the time of Jessica's kidnapping, he had already turned 14. But Stephen reached out to his ex-wife and starts talking to her. Hey, I'm thinking of moving. It's far away. Our son, we shouldn't uproot him, this kind of thing. Would you consider, come on back, da, 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 da.
Even though she'd already lost custody.
I don't know if she technically lost custody. I just know that he had custody. I don't know what the formal decree was, but I just know that he had custody. So I don't know if it was an agreement, a court order, but anyway, so he convinces her over the course of time. And she of course was willing because it's her son. Yes, I will move in with you. So the very first day she moved in to take care of her son so that he could leave and go move for this new job was the day of Jessica's kidnapping. And so the wife was there to say, oh, no, this wasn't a spur of the moment thing. And I didn't normally live there. Yep. This was planned for weeks.
And they found receipts that he had bought rope and duct tape and a knife in the weeks leading up to this day as well. So he was planning for all sorts of contingencies.
Right. And those ropes were actually, or some of the bindings were actually used on Jessyca in that hotel room.
Yeah. So as Kathy said, really from the defense's point of view, it was all about this was consensual. She was unhappy at her home. She didn't want to live with her mother and stepfather anymore. She wanted to be with Stephen. They also said that this was actually one of the reasons she wanted to leave her house is because he was not the first person to molest her. That Jessyca had been molested by 2 other men prior to Stephen initiating his contact with her.
And they were using that as her motive to want to run away. But that fact, that was true, that happened. Yeah. But that didn't come out until after she came home. So when she came home and started talking about her abuse, the floodgates came open and they found out about these 2 other people. So poor Jessyca.
Right. I mean, honestly, and especially because I think it was right around the same time he started molesting her, which remember was when she was 8. She was in 3rd grade. One of the men was actually convicted, but the other one...
His charges were pending at the time this trial was taking place. So I don't know what happened.
Okay.
But...
Something. Hopefully.
Good for her for vomiting out the truth.
I know. Because if you've always hidden that other part, and if the defense had found out and she didn't bring that up ahead of time, that could have gone against her as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So they're like, look, this happened to her these 2 other occasions. And,
right. And so the defense also asserted that as the attention to Jessyca grew about what she was saying had happened, well, so did her stories. So she was just doing this for all the attention she was receiving, which in part was part of the problem with the kids at school who were all saying the exact same thing. So she said, junior high, high school, college, people were like, why didn't you run when you could? Why didn't you call somebody? Which Kathy already talked about. Why didn't you run away? Which Kathy talked about. But 20 years prior, Patty Hearst had been kidnapped and people heard for the first time about Stockholm Syndrome. Mm-hmm. 20 years later, apparently, the small towns in Wisconsin had not heard of it because they were saying, nope, you did it for attention. Nope, you could have run. Nope, you chose to stay. It's all you. And these, and honestly, that, it's sad that kids could think that kind of thing.
But it's also low resolution thinking. So of course you're going to think that kind of thing, The defense also called a doctor to the stand, Kathy, and this doctor examined Jessyca 6 days after she was returned to Wisconsin after she was found. Now, the doctor testified that he examined Jessyca from head to toe, and that included looking for any sign of rape. And the doctor testified that there were no traumatic signs
of any sort of forced sexual contact, and her examination was normal. But he did stress that you don't have to have sexual assault in order to have trauma. But again, all the defense wanted to know was, oh, didn't rape her. Sorry,
Yep.
you can't say this.
Yep.
Now, as to the DNA, which Kathy talked about, there was DNA found on a sock and in her underwear that belonged to both Jessyca, and then semen that belonged to Stephen Oliver. And they said, the defense said, well, no. It wasn't because he had sex with her. It's because he used her underwear and sock to masturbate with. And that's why it wound up being there along with her DNA. As one does.
As one does.
Yeah. That's a question mark, as one does. Now, the other thing, Kathy, and I wasn't happy with this testimony, but Jessica's stepmother also testified. Her name was Bobby Jo. Bobby Jo testified and said, well, she knew that Jessyca had always been unhappy living with her mother, Monica, at her house, and said that Jessyca had talked to her about running away before. Bobby Jo also said that Jessyca had complained to her about her stepdad twisting her arm and forcing the kids to keep their bedroom doors open. Now, Bobby Jo also said that she suspected that Stephen Oliver was molesting Jessyca, but didn't say anything to anyone about it. She believed that Stephen was trying to interrupt their family life and take Dale, Jessica's father's place within Jessica's life.
I would not have the nerve to say those words on the stand. Yeah, I thought this little girl was being molested, but I didn't tell anyone else. Didn't tell her dad, didn't tell her mom,
Nope.
didn't,
Exactly.
didn't call the cops.
Didn't confront Stephen for doing it. None of it.
She did talk to Jessyca.
She did. She said she talked to Jessyca because Bobby Jo said she had been sexually molested, which is another reason it's very strange to me that she didn't actually call it out for Jessyca.
Mm-hmm.
But she said she'd been sexually molested and had gone to Jessyca trying to get her to talk about it. Who knows how she led into that?
Right.
But apparently Jessyca was very offended and said nothing happened and didn't want to talk to her about it anymore at all. And then the final thing that Bobby Jo said was that the night before her disappearance, remember she went to her father's house on Friday night, she said she came with a larger suitcase than normal, and Jessyca hugged Bobby Jo for longer than she usually did.
Which, of course, the defense used.
Yeah.
Oh, look.
She was planning.
Jessyca was planning on running away.
She was consenting as a 13-year-old 7th grader.
Exactly. So, June 27th, 1996... Stephen Oliver gets convicted on both counts, the kidnapping and crossing state lines for
illegal
improper
sexual
purposes. Exactly. So this judge had a nickname, and it was Maximum John, which just cracks me
I'm
up.
assuming John's his first name.
I'm going to start calling Maximum Julianne.
Oh, I like it. Judge Julianne needs a nickname.
But anyway, so yeah, John, I'm assuming was his first name. But this guy was quoted in the papers. He was actually pretty hysterical without realizing he's being hysterical. But anyway, so...
Which makes it even more hysterical.
Exactly. She gets convicted. They wait a few weeks at the sentencing hearing. You know, they have people talking about, victim impact statements, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, Jessica's mom understood that the maximum sentence could be 10 years. She also knew that the state prosecutors, so we're in federal court right now, and the state prosecutors wanted to try him on their own state criminal charges. So they had already filed a criminal complaint against him. They were waiting for the federal case to wrap up, and then they were going to do their own. So Jessica's mom was hoping that Maximum John would throw the book.
I think that's Judge Maximum John.
Exactly. Judge Maximum John would throw the book at Stephen Oliver, give him 10 years, and be good. She did not want to go forward with the state prosecution unless he got a light sentence. So she was hoping he'd throw the book at him and the state case would be dismissed.
And save Jessyca from going through it again.
Exactly. Maximum John gave Stephen Oliver 40 years.
Nicely done, Judge Maximum John.
40 years without the possibility of parole. And so this was like news to their ears. And I do believe that the state case was dismissed because all the things I read, all the research I did, I saw nothing about a state prosecution. I think they're like 40 years in a federal pokey, good enough.
And now we don't have to pay for a new trial.
Exactly. And he was 38, I believe, at the time he was convicted of this. So
do you know how many people, how many young children were saved by that? Honestly,
I know.
Getting him
So
out of there,
true.
it
It's
wasn't
so
like a
true.
5-year, oh, but are you sorry for it? Well, then we'll only give you 1 year now.
Yeah, no, but I want to like talk briefly about an appeal because,
Okay. Briefly.
I'm the only one who enjoys this.
I'm just not at that point in my school of law training yet. I'll get there.
They appealed on a bunch of grounds, but the only one that was interesting was the fact that Judge Maximum John, went above and beyond the regular sentencing guidelines, and he added on all these multipliers for enhancements. And one of them was that he added time on for the fact that she went through severe pain and suffering. So one of the defense points of appeal was that you can't add on for that because the prosecution did not put any evidence on of what normal pain and suffering would be. So I have to read, this is what the Court of Appeal said. Moreover, unversed in psychology, this court finds it hard to imagine what a normal reaction to being kidnapped and transported across state lines for illegal sexual purposes would be. The judge did not err in relying upon the testimony of a psychologist.
I love that.
I know, I love it. Moreover, unversed in psychology.
What is normal in a reaction to this?
Exactly. But one of the things that I appreciate about this story is that all of this horrific trauma that Jessyca went through, she ultimately, she gave back. And over time, especially on the anniversaries, like the 10-year, the 20-year, she would give interviews to various media outlets about her experience. And she said, as you already mentioned, that she had a horrible time with kids in grammar school, high school, and college, asking her why. Why didn't you leave? You had a chance. Why didn't you tell anybody? One of the things that she was able to describe more fully as an adult was how totally consumed she was. She believed she was Cindy Johnson.
Well, he brainwashed her.
Completely brainwashed.
Absolutely.
And which a combination of fear and abuse and sexual violence and everything else.
And physical violence.
And so she said over the course of those 3 months, she had pretty much forgotten what her family was. In her mind, she was Cindy Johnson until she heard her mother's voice.
And it all clicked back for her.
Yeah. But so she talks about the brainwashing. And one of the things that I thought was so disgusting and despicable, and this man will have to answer to his maker when his ticket's pulled. When he began molesting her when she was little, a baby, a third grader, he told her, "You're ugly. You're so ugly.
You're disgusting.
You're disgusting. No one will love you."
Yep. You're stupid.
Yes. And so just the vile tear down of this child's sense of self. And then, of course, 3 months of torture. So you had mentioned Stockholm Syndrome. I don't know if that's on the ticket, just because that's like empathy with some of it's empathy.
Well, but she
some
wasn't
of it's brainwashing.
trying to get away anymore, though, too. Like, that's what I mean. She wasn't actively trying to escape once she realized she couldn't, and then kept hearing this over and over and over again.
But she felt she couldn't. She was Cindy Johnson. She was terrified. She was terrified for her life.
We had mentioned that she was physically assaulted every day.
Yes.
And one of the places where he hit her frequently was in the face, specifically punching her in the jaw. And so I saw an interview with her that was actually done 20 years after she was rescued. It was after those 3 women in Ohio, I believe it was Cleveland, Ohio, were found.
Yeah.
And she made the comment that she, at that point, had to have 10 surgeries on her jaw for all the damage that he had done during that time frame. And there are pictures of her that they showed where her jaw is like, after she was rescued, obviously her jaw is just a little bit off.
Oh.
Like it was kind of just like off to the side. She had a hard time speaking. You could tell like her teeth were not the same as they had been in pictures. It was horrible.
And she was told by doctors that she had a 3 to 5% chance of being able to conceive her own child because of everything she had been through.
Right.
And, by the grace of God, she did.
She had 2 children.
She was able to marry and have 2 kids. Yep. And, so.
And what's interesting about that, and just really quickly, because I know we do want to wrap this up.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that she said, and again, we've talked about this on our podcast forever and ever and ever. She said that once again, she was confronted with these demons when she had kids and they started going to school. And so she found herself when her daughter, who's the older one, went to kindergarten, telling the moms, do not put your child's name on the backpack. You don't want some sort of abductor to be able to feign personal knowledge of them or any sort of familiarity, because that's how they take them away. She also said that they had a 2-story house and the master bedroom was on the 2nd floor. And when it was time for their daughter to have her own bedroom, they actually gave the daughter the master bedroom, and she and her husband slept on the 1st floor because the daughter was on the 1st floor with a window facing the street and didn't want to put her daughter there. And, Kathy and I always laugh about it because my whole life, as you all know, I've been safety Marie. My dad was a detective sergeant with the LAPD. That's how we were raised. We were the only kids anywhere on the planet who did not have our license plate with our name on it on the back of our bike. We were not allowed to do it. We didn't have any t-shirts that had our name on it. We had nothing.
I had a backpack that had my name on it, and the backpack was yellow with dark black letters. So it was totally like practically glow in the dark.
They were encouraging people to get to know Kathy.
That's how all the high school kids were like screaming at me, Kathy. They'd be like, screw you. Like every bad expletive you can imagine as my like 12-year-old butt was like hustling past them. It was a nightmare.
But it was just interesting to see this too, that it's like, it is still a thing. It's even worse with social media when you have your kids out there with names. And I know some parents choose to, and you know what? It is a personal choice. Having grown up the way I do, and I know I've told this story again, but just this is like the ultimate safety Marie that I pull, is that I was in a new apartment with one of my friends, and it was, you walked up a set of stairs within our apartment, you walked up a set of stairs to be in the living room, kitchen, dining room, and off of that was back deck. So to get out to the back deck, you had to go through a door that had a deadbolt. But it wasn't a turn deadbolt. You had to have a key to turn the deadbolt. But it was also glass paneled. So here was the trauma I went through. Do you leave the key in the door so that you can get out in case of a fire? But if somebody breaks one of those glass panels, they could get in and unlock the door and come in.
The answer is, you don't even lock the door.
Okay. No.
That's my answer.
Wrong. The correct answer is you have it on a hook right next to the door so that we know where it is to get it, which is actually stupid. You should have it in the door, because if there's a fire, we're not going to be like, oh, let me get it.
I know, exactly.
But again, we also couldn't have gotten off the deck anyway in a fire because it was up the whole entire story. And we would have fallen and broken at least several things. But anyways, that's my life.
Yeah.
So it explains a lot.
But anyway, God loved Jessyca. The fact that she also gave back. Just one more thing, and then we're going to go. But she also spoke to kids. Yeah. Like she had a degree in psychology. She had a degree in criminal justice. So she was a smart lady, and she'd go to schools and she would speak to groups of children about how to recognize abuse, how to talk about abuse, how to avoid abuse.
Right.
And so I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And she also talked about the fear for when Stephen Oliver got out of prison. And he has a release date of January 26, 2031. He is now 68 years old and serving time at the Federal Medical Center, Devens, in Ayer, Massachusetts.
2031 is 35 years after he was convicted, and we can't figure out why he lost those 5 years, because it wasn't time served ahead of time.
Right.
So...
all right. Thanks for listening.
Please support us on Patreon if you can. It's $5. You won't have to listen to ads, but if you want bloopers and videos and all sorts of nonsense with us, it's $10. There is a 7-day free trial at the $10 level, so you can listen to all the goodies and still not subscribe if you don't want to, but please do.
Bye-bye.
Is that it? Okay, bye.